Marina Abramović, it's a privilege. We decided to startle our audience right from the start, in line with your work. What did we just see?
Really brings smile to my face because we in ex-Yugoslavia, where I come from, got television so late. And just a few privileged families had the television, the ones who were communist. If you're not communist, you was not able to have television. And I remember when television arrived at home that we only have evening program. That was it, not during the day.
So we're talking 1950s, right?
Yeah, in late 1950s. And then I remember that, my brother and me will sit in the front of television and look the test picture, basically. And in the beginning, when you open television for, hours and hours of just the snow and electricity and, moving, very abstract. And then became, this Yugoslav television starts. I really think, looking back into the past, that probably this was my first introduction to meditation, just looking to the test picture on Yugoslav television in the morning. And then in the evening, we will have the journal, all the good news, bad news of the day. Then we will have war movies, lots of war movies, where the Germans was always bad and killing everybody. And then later on came Dallas and came Peyton Place.
But wait, you had Dallas and Peyton Place in a communist country?
That was loved, only these two programs. And this was incredible. And it was very destructive, I think, to us, because we could see this wonderful American life. And everybody smoked cigarettes, have a chewing gum, and drink aperitifs in the afternoon, and have big cars and big houses. And this was something you look into kind of parallel reality that was almost not true. Yeah, and this was it, the television test picture, and no program at all, just very few things.
Yeah. And then you waited sitting in front of the TV.
And I was always thinking about this funny joke. In Albania it was even worse. In Albania, Enver Hoxha, who was the president of Albania, every evening the speaker would say, "Good evening, Enver Hoxha," tell him the news, and say, "Good night, Enver Hoxha." And why? Because he was the only one who had the television in entire Albania. But we had better. We have some people who can really look television, so we felt like very privileged, not like Albanians.
That is hilarious. So sometimes I introduce this type of television interview, and I say we're setting off on a journey through your life, through your mind. But I've never felt that way so literally as today, because we are here in your storage space, your archives, your depot. You store everything here. Everything from your performances is here, and I had the privilege of walking around a little by myself, and it's like strolling through your career, basically. There's props from performances from the 70s. I saw a whip in a box. I saw clothing that still has your blood on it, crystals everywhere, crystals on the table.
Absolutely.
Even the dress you wore at the performance, the artist is present, you did at the moment, even that dress is here. How does it feel for you to be surrounded basically by your past?
But first was not like this always. When I left Yugoslavia, I escaped home, and I never told my mother that I left. I just took a second-class train and go to Amsterdam. And all what I had, it was just a small bag of negatives of my performances at that time, because I didn't want she noticed that I was missing. And when I didn't come that night at home, she went to police and she said that, my daughter escaped, because she knew that actually I really didn't want to live there anymore. And they say, "Okay, how old is your daughter?" And my mother said, "I'm 29. And police look at her and say, "Comrade Abramović, I think it's about time that she left," and didn't do anything. And I remember that was all what I had. And then, in Amsterdam, all my stories start with Ulay, which I met him, and, we lived together in the car. So in the car, everything we had was in the car. And sometimes we had more things that we could not fit in the car. So we would have boxes of summer clothes. We would leave at our friends in Amsterdam. and then winter clothes to somebody else. Everybody who had a cellar and was friend in Amsterdam had some box from our stuff.
Yeah.
Also correspondence and stuff like that.
So at first, in the beginning of your career, it was a very minimalist lifestyle with no possessions whatsoever.
But some possessions we had, because we had the documentation about all our work working. At the Apple Gallery, we had a shoebox next to the window. And then with our correspondence was coming, and then we would call from some payphone anywhere in the world and say, please, at that time, Miles was director. He said, can you read the letters, open letters and read to see what kind of performances we can go somewhere else to do.
Yeah.
And this was like that.
But now you've collected all of this around you.
And then, this is even more story. Yeah. Then after split to Tula, I got house in Amsterdam. They had more things. Then after that, I went to live in Paris for 4 years. Then after Paris, they have more stuff there. Then I went to Berlin to live in Berlin. Then I went back to Amsterdam. Then I traveled. So everything was everywhere. And finally, when I came here, I decided all my stuff from all around the world to actually send to one place. And that's here.
That's here, 2 hours from New York.
Yeah.
But then still the question, when you're sitting here surrounded by all that, how does that make you feel?
I'm not somebody who is nostalgic about past. I hate actually to think about past. I'm only interested in present and what I'm going to do next. So it's in a way, when I will not be live, probably the Star House for me will be, something that I will give the kind of residency situation that young artists, but only performance artists. I'm not interested in any other media.
And the Star House is the house you live in. We're here at the depot, and then next to here is your house, and that's the Star House.
And then they could study, they could, they could work here, and they could be very useful material.
But what if, and obviously let's pray that's not going to happen, I mean, knock on wood, but what if a fire would break out in here? What item would you try to save, above all?
I don't think nothing.
No.
Because it doesn't matter. When you go forever, and everything else become nonsense and useless. And if this all work the other people can't use, I don't need to save anything.
You don't need to save
me,
anything.
It's very important be minimal and emptiness, and body is just the kind of how you say box.
The vessel.
Which soul live.
Yeah.
And the soul is everything. And I think that what I like to save, if I'm thinking, it will not be material objects, it will be ideas. Ideas live forever, and they're immaterial.
Yeah, you can run out a building on fire naked and still have your ideas.
Ideas are there forever, and they can, transcend your mortality.
The format of this program is simple, as we get to know you and your work a little better by discussing clips from movies and documentaries you selected. And we're starting off with the death of Marshal Tito of Yugoslavia. His death on May 4th, 1980. Tito died in Slovenia, and there was a 4-hour broadcast, including the ride of the train carrying his body to Belgrade. Do you want to add anything, or shall we watch the clip first?
I would like actually to say something before. To me, this was an incredibly important moment in my life. I was in Amsterdam already, and I remember when Tito died, it was so sad to me, because Tito presents really one country. And I felt that after Tito is not there anymore, everything is going to fall apart and nothing will be the same. So I remember inviting Marinka, a friend of mine at that time, and she was Croatian, and we cooked entire lunch, because the funeral was in the afternoon, and we actually sit at the front of television, eat and cry. This is what I've been doing from the beginning, all 4 hours, entire funeral. And every time I look this material, even it's so long ago, I have the same emotions.
So the footage we're going to see, I'm going to give a bit more context, is from a documentary documenting the 4 days from the announcement of his death until his funeral, and it's entitled Days of Pain and Pride.
I can't be without emotions with looking at this. And it doesn't matter how many times I saw it. The Biners are singing Comrade Tito, we give you our word of honor that we will never take wrong direction. And after this, it's just hell. After this, we had 6 republics who've been together, who've been helping each other, who've been in peace, and now it's just 7 countries that you need, passports to cross, and everything is destroyed with the greed and corruption, and so many people die in such incredible ways, and genocide and hate, and whatever he done, he really put everybody together. He invented the idea of non-aligned countries, because that time world was divided by Russians and Americans, and he put all the other people, like Egypt, like India, like all the countries from in Africa. Really, the countries would belong to no one bloc or another bloc, to find a way, how to work together, how to find economical solution, and he was very special. And a part of this, was complete playboy. Yeah. He loved Sophia Loren and Gina Lollobrigida, and he bring them to the boat and entertain them, and he drink whiskey and look the movies with Lee Marvin, and he go to China and borrow the money, and he go to Russia and go to get the money for country, and he go to America and get the money, and all of people, everything was kind of possible with him. And then he died, and then everything collapsed. So that I felt intuitively when I was sitting in Amsterdam looking at this funeral, nothing going to be the same. And then everything's changed, because when they ask me where I come from, I never say Serbia. Even in my family come from Montenegro. I always say I'm ex-Yugoslav, because my country, when I left, it was Yugoslavia. When I came back, there was the country exists. This country don't exist. There was not anymore.
No. It's obviously, I can see that it still touches you on a very deep level.
Yes.
And
I just want to say one more thing. Did you see how incredible he was loved? But the normal people, but everybody, from coal miners to the old people, the soldiers, the people in the countryside, the peasants. It was a true love. It was this cry. It was not the cry,
That's what I wonder.
Came from the heart.
Because obviously my knowledge of history is limited from a Western point of view, and I think I can't imagine Dutch people reacting this way when a politician dies, let alone a man who I see as a dictator, and yet people are crying. Can you explain to me?
Whatever he was portrayed, in my point of view, he never was dictator. He was there for life, but he was doing good things, and this was how the people react. Mm-hmm. And I don't see any president in this moment in any country who kind of evoke this kind of emotions right now.
Your parents were war heroes during the guerrilla uprising against Nazi occupation of Yugoslavia in World War II, and important figures in the Tito regime. What kind of war experiences shaped your parents?
My parents come from totally different background, and the different reasons bring them to the war. My mother come from very wealthy family, and her uncle was Patriarch Varnava, who was a patriarch of Orthodox Church, and being actually poisoned by the king of Yugoslavia at that time.
He was like a pope.
He was the same like a pope, mm-hmm. But basically he was refusing to bring Catholic and Orthodox Church to unite it. It was just before the Second World War, mm-hmm. And he was invited by the king with the 2 brothers. One was my father, my mother, and my grandfather, and he was invited for lunch. And on the direction of the doctor, of the king, they was put in the food the crushed diamonds, and 3 of them, they both died in 1 month's time from the terrible bleeding of the stomach, and then he became saint. He was proclaimed the Russian Orthodox Church as a saint. So that was from the mother's side. But at the same time, my mother was also studying in Switzerland, And she was very interested in Marx and Engels' ideas. And there was a very big group of intellectuals who actually wanted to be communist. When my mother came back from Switzerland, and the war started, she decided to go to partisans, and she left 45 pairs of shoes and dressed the peasant clothes and escaped. My grandmother was...
So she came from a wealthy family but decided to go with the guerrilla.
For really kind of, it was very, I would not say fashionable reasons, but it was really intellectual reasons why to be communist.
Yeah, idealistic.
And my grandmother really hated communism, my grandmother, because they took everything from her, basically all the wealth.
And your father?
And my father's side come from extremely poor family, 13 children, which his father was major of army, the father of the father was major of, I mean, there was all the warriors in the family from the beginning to the end, and he already had communist ideas about democracy and about, the equal rights and about, not having possessions for your own good already in the 30s, and he was in a prison in the 30s, much more before the war started.
Yeah.
So he was true communist. And my mother came from bourgeois family and went to the war, and my father from the really poverty.
Yeah.
And they met in the war, and that was very complicated marriage, because when peace came, it didn't work.
I did wonder, what were their experiences during the war? Did they fight? I mean, your mom was a nurse.
No, my mother was a commander of the Red Cross division who goes to the front and pick up warriors and bring them to the hospital.
Yeah.
And my father had a 13th division. He was like a guerrilla. He would go into the village full of Germans and fight with them. I mean, he was like complete guerrilla type and been wounded several times. So they met in the war, they split, and they met again after the war. But they was in different fronts all the time.
And how did that history affect your childhood?
My mother never talked about war, and my father always talked about the war. So when my mother died, I find the piece of the paper that I could not believe. Why she was, give the medal for the heroism, because she never told me that, and nobody not my brother, not me, I know.
Because she was considered a war hero.
She also was, both of them. But my father, I knew all the way why and what, but never my mother. But my mother's story was incredible. It was a liberation of Belgrade, and she was the commander of this division to bring the wounded to the territory. It was not occupied, and she was in a truck with the 45 heavily wounded soldiers they pick up from the streets of Belgrade in the same time when my father was on white horse fighting somewhere on the other streets. And then, the truck got stuck because the driver got shot, and the driver was dying, and the truck was in flame. So she had the 6 nurses with her, and she take the nurses and put every soldier who is full in clothes and weapons, to take them on the sidewalk one by one and put them there, 45 of them. And the truck started being fire, and she ran into the truck in fire and got the land phone to call for another truck to come from the safety part of Belgrade. And then, the 4 nurses been killed. So there was a 2 nurse and her. New truck arrived. She put all 45 people and bring them to safety. And this was my mother. And I never heard this before. Only when she died, I learned that.
After her death, you found...
find a piece of paper, newspaper article.
Yeah. How? But how did the history of you, your mother, your parents, how did that affect your childhood?
In that time, it was not about the war. It was that I hated my childhood. It was so sad childhood. I was first sitting till I was 6 with my grandmother, which was wonderful. And after 6, I was brought to my parents. So
the first 6 years of your life, after you were born, you were brought to your grandmother?
Yes, because my father and mother was doing career and didn't have time for me.
Oh, okay.
And I was there. And then when my brother was born, when I was exactly 6, I was brought back to mother and father. Mother and father had horrible fights and very violent fights all the time, and they didn't understand each other. My father would like to, roast the pig in a courtyard and talk to the soldiers, and my mother liked to go to see Bolshoi theater and opera. So there was two different backgrounds that didn't absolutely kind of work. Plus, my father was very unfaithful.
And you were in between all of that.
All the time, yeah. And then, it was incredible discipline, and everything was forbidden. And if I sleep messy in the bed, I would wake up in the middle of the night to make my bed and then sleep very quietly.
Wait, you were sleeping in your bed and then...
My mother would wake me up because my bed was too messy how I slept. So when now I go to hotel, my dear, people don't think I'm in the bed because I'm so well trained. I open the bed, I sleep, I close the bed, there's no wrinkle.
You were not allowed to make the bed messy while you were sleeping?
Yes, that kind of military control I had.
Wow.
Anyway, I think, all of this is not to be sorry for me, because I actually understood much later that mother wanted to make me warrior, and she did. So
But it's a hard way to make a child a warrior.
Yes, but, I have discipline, I have willpower, and this is the only reason I could do what I've been doing. Otherwise, without this, I could never come to this point in my life like now. So... it was hard, but it was worth it.
It was hard, but it was worth it.
Yeah.
You're headlined now as the grandmother of performance art. Not my words. I would say godmother. I like that better. It's a more spiritual.
I don't like grandmother, godmother. No. I want to be warrior. I'm warrior.
Let's call you the warrior.
Give me some little bit of Amazon.
Warrior of...
Give me the warrior title, much better.
And in this program, you would like to showcase the work of some of your fellow performance artists and video artists. There's 2 clips ready for us.
Yeah.
One is a compilation of so-called headpieces, just showing the head, featuring 3 of your students. And one is about the time clock piece by Taiwanese performance artist Tehching. Let's start with time clock. For a whole year, from 1980 to 81, Hsieh punched a worker's time clock on the hour, every hour, day and night.
Yes, what do you think?
And he puts it, his words are so beautiful as well.
But what do you think about this kind of activity as a normal person seeing for the first time?
Your initial reaction is, he must be crazy.
Yeah.
And then when you see the dedication and the idea behind it, also in context of the other projects he did, he lived in a cage for a year. What is your first? Your first reaction is, I don't know if that's...
I have been there when he cut the rope between the person that he'd been tied in the rope for an entire year, and this was his last performance of 5 years. So
because he did 5 pieces of 1 year performances during 5 years.
Mm-hmm. And for me, if we talk about master performance, he's the master. I am just his student, if I think about, because, I never done anything longer than 3 months. But 1 year, it's you have no idea, it's mind-blowing. It's mind-blowing what this man done. The cage thing is also incredible. He created literally a cage in his living room where he have just a little tub to drink the water. He have one bucket that he pee and shit, that his friend would take only once a day. He would bring him the food and take this thing out, like real prison. And he have the bed, and he never talk for a while, and never communicate with anybody for 1 entire year. He doesn't write, he doesn't read, he doesn't listen to music, nothing. So to do such a thing,
that was my question. What does it take for an artist to be able to do that?
It's before this, I want to tell you, when I asked him, but how was to be in that place for 1 year? And he said to me, if you adopt this as a reality, and you're living here and now in this moment, the bed you can divide in 3 places. If you sit in the left corner of the bed, this is your sleeping room. If you sit in the middle, this is your living room. And if you sit in the far right side, this is your garden. So mind can travel anywhere you want. But then also the punch in the clock. You can't go away for 1 hour anywhere. You can't sleep longer than 1 hour. You can't eat, you have to be in 1 hour to be able to punch this clock. And then also, which is mind-blowing, is honesty. Because he records every second of it. It's like, it's not cheating. This, what you see, it's exactly what it is. So, when artists make artwork, he always wanted to say as much as possible and to say everything in that artwork, That's why artwork, most of the time, is so complex and people take time to finish it. And then he realized that actually there's always something is not finished. This is why artists make another work, because they have different ideas. But in his case, he made 5 pieces. That 5 pieces, art is about transformation. And it's about changing your consciousness and about realization, understanding about life, who we are, why we are on this planet, and everything else. After these 5 years, I went to him, he lived in Brooklyn, and I said to him, and now what are you doing now? His answer is the answer that actually proved that he really went through transformation. Art that rigorous, incredible disciplined, willpower art transforming. He said, and now I'm doing life, just living. This is, what happened when you really get to this transformation. You become master, and he is the one.
He is the master.
Yeah, for me is the master. Yeah. Because to do that, like artist is present. It's difficult performance. It's really 3 months, and it's just 8 hours sitting without motion, without going anywhere. 10 hours on Friday, museum is closed.
Yeah, you sat there for 3 months, 8 hours a day.
Not talking to anybody,
not talking, just not moving, sitting still, like not moving, but just
And then 10 hours, on the Fridays museum is no longer open. But this every day could be the last. It was so physically difficult. It was so incredibly difficult to generate willpower and to have that kind of concentration. And I know the hell here. But doing this 5 years, 1 year each piece, it's almost unthinkable. And that's why I have such a huge admiration for him.
Yeah, but speaking of your performance, and sitting for 8 hours a day, 3 months every day is also, I cannot fathom that. And he says it's not about suffering, it's about survival. I mean, and I think I can't, and people in general can grasp the stamina it takes to sit still on a chair for 8 hours a day, let alone how painful it must be. On the other side, the great danger of performance art is that pain is mistaken for meaning, right? What you do is not masochistic. What is the function of pain in your work?
Once you lose the fear of pain, the door of secrets are open to you, and you understand that actually you can control the pain, and pain can be controlled. And there's all different state of consciousness that you go in. And that realization is incredible. But you can only go when you really do it to the end. Like very simple, you sit on the chair, and after already, even some people after 20 minutes, some people after 1 hour or 3 hours or 2 hours, the pain of the muscles are so enormous that you say, if I don't move my muscle, if I don't change the position of the body, I can't take it. And then you're still taking it. And then you come to the point, okay, this is so much that they're going to faint. And then when you say to yourself, so what's the deal, faint? And when you get to that far and you say to yourself, faint, something miraculous is happening. And you can only happen that when you go through that kind of experience, that you give everything, all of your energy to that point. Then pain disappears.
And what's after that?
And after that is the realization that you're not afraid of pain. Your realization that actually you have control of your own self, on your own emotions. It's a huge deal. The people that you try to learn our lives, but actually you can do it yourself without any help.
Can you hold on to that feeling for longer?
Yes, because it's there. Once you experience, even if there's a time that you maybe can't, you still know there is there. And then the darkness is lifted up. There is a hope. And that hope holds you till the rest of your life. It's a realization. And that, when you're talking about these great gurus or saints sitting in the caves for 10 years, and they get to that point. But, if you really, every human being have ability, but you have to have, again, willpower and determination to do that. This is why I'm grateful to my childhood. I got that.
The warrior inside you.
And then but you see, and then I see the Tehching, what he do is just mind-blowing. But then I see him, how he's now. This man is a realized human being who is happy living everyday life in the simple things. When he eats, when he smile, and there's no doubts, and there's no depression or any of this kind of stuff that human beings go up and down.
Let's go to 3 artists who have all studied with you. Melati Suryodarmo, Nezaket Ekije, and Christian Thompson. All 3 pieces reflect in some form their cultural background, the cultural background of the artist. For example, the title of Christian Thompson's work, Detong, refers to the Australian indigenous language of his father, a language that's almost extinct.
And he is also, it's very important that he is also, he studied and is Doctor of Philosophy in Oxford, and he's first Aborigine who gained this degree.
This degree, yeah. We see a compilation of their work. Is there anything we need to pay special attention to before we start watching?
Yeah, I just want to say, the people I teach more than 25 years around the world, and I've been very hardcore teacher. And students, I always say to me, when I arrive, I kill them with so much work, and then when I leave, they immediately go to take some rest because it was too much. But now, I have all of them, telling me how it was good and important to them because they really learn things. This particular choice of the 3 works is just to show the audience the performance is not about just performing all body. You can actually perform with the parts of the body and give the message. And here we have 3 examples of 3 completely different, artists performing with their heads. Yes. Let's look at this. Yeah.
Why did you pick these 3 performances? I
really like the diversity. And, when I teach, the one thing I don't like that I never like that my students look like me and my work. I always wanted the original. I always wanted to look into their own culture. I always wanted to really be personal, what they meant to them. And this is why these 3 really they express this, Indonesian, they're all in many ways political pieces. The one with the restriction and sound piece with Melati, the Turkish Nezat Ekaci, she take hula hoop as a repression material, basically, it's only around her neck, and the music is the music they're using for belly dance, which is something that export for the tourist material. When you talk about the Turkish woman that doing belly dance, and she do that in
the sugar-coated version of that.
And she show another level of restriction. And then this one is, he comes from the tribe, which this language is forgotten. And then, of course, we have the British who invade Australia and who actually was killing Aborigines in terrible ways, and during the centuries, and like in Tasmania, there's no one Aborigine left ever. So then he have this British flag, and singing this forgotten language. I think they're incredibly, to me, good works.
And it's important to emphasize the fact that these 3 artists, they are performing, they're not acting. For example, the Turkish artist, the piece with the hula hoop, it lasted in the actual piece, it lasted for 3 hours, right? She got exhausted. She's not acting that she's exhausted. No. She's actually exhausted.
Yeah, but to me, performance is very different. It's not theater piece.
No.
Everything is real. The blood is not ketchup, and knife is real knife. And everything is real, and it's in real time.
It is,
and,
yeah.
And this is why it's such an incredible, strong media. It's so difficult to be accepted culturally, to be as a mainstream art for so long. When performance starting, in video starting, video was accepted much earlier as a mainstream art, same as a photography, but never performance. And I find that I really see myself as that I contribute to accept performance and mainstream art. Especially the show in MoMA was the first time that actually, at that time, the performance art was really in a main museum, like of that kind of status.
And people stood in line for it for hours, days.
Yeah, but that's why, because performance, is emotional. And emotions is something that you can't hang on the wall. You have to experience. And experience is very important. And to me, one of the most incredible touching moments of all this, that there in the MoMA museum, there is 76 guards of the museum who are guarding art, and that's their job. And they will go home in the weekends, change the uniform, and come and wait in the line to sit with me.
Really?
And this was for me something that really touched me. That it was to move on an emotional level much deeper than just showing art in a museum. It was something else happening there.
Yeah. In hindsight, looking back on it, it was such a huge success. What do you think you provided for people, that they stood in line for days, that the guards came back in the weekend in their free time?
It was very simple. That actually, in New York, people are sad and pain. They're pain, and people avoid looking each other's eyes, and there is a lot of loneliness. And it was, I don't know. Then I just had a very simple structure. You sit in the front of me, you don't talk to me, you just look at me, that's it. And I remember the director of the museum saying, yeah, but nobody's going to sit on the chair. Who have time in New York? New York is, a city who never sleep, and it will be empty. And I say, I don't care. I'm going to sit on this chair regardless, this amount of time that I said, and that's it. Chair was never empty. And the people wait in the lines. And when they come to sit finally on the chair, they was observed by other people in waiting. They was filmed, they was photographed, and they was observed by me. So they realized there's nowhere to go except into themselves. At the moment when you really got into yourself, you find everything. You find sadness and loneliness and all lots of other emotions. And most of the time was crying. Everybody was crying. It was so much tears at that time in the museum.
It reminded me, and please don't take this the wrong way, but I don't think you will. It reminded me also of a funeral, because sometimes you go to a funeral and the person has died is maybe not even that close to your heart, but because you take the time to reflect and you're quiet and you're listening, and then all of a sudden all your own emotions also pop up about other things you might be said about other people you've lost.
But I have to tell you that I've been on one Dutch funeral and nobody cried. And actually with the Dutch it's a virtue not to cry. I was very shocked about that.
No, you're
honestly, I was.
Then
in
we've been to different funerals.
I was at a funeral. She was 35 years old, and I don't want to say who it was, but it was young, very young, and died from cancer. Left 2 kids, and that funeral, the only 2 little children cried. Nobody else.
Oh, that's horrible.
And they explained to me this is very much Protestant, that actually it's virtue not to cry in your funerals. I don't know if it's true, but I experienced one like that. But never mind, the people, it's the same thing when you go to see theater piece and the main actor die or the beautiful film. You're not crying because of their story, you cry of your story,
of your own story
that you actually project on that story. Yes. That's the situation.
That is very, very similar.
But it's not true that you don't cry.
I cry, but I cry very easily, so maybe...
No, but what about the rest of the country?
It is, maybe there is some, I agree that there might be some shame to it. Sometimes I feel ashamed for crying at a funeral, and that is weird. that you feel like you're not allowed to, or
Yeah.
you have to grab your handkerchief quickly and take it away? It's not
I
in
love
the
crying.
open.
You know, for me, if I go to the movie and I don't cry, movie is not good. I need to cry.
Let's go back to 1990. 1 year after the Berlin Wall fell, Stedelijk Museum organized a 5-day conference called Art Meets Science and Spirituality in a Changing Economy. You were living in Amsterdam at the time, and you were one of the speakers at this conference. It brought together scientists, economics, philosophers,
Spiritual leaders.
Yeah, the Dalai Lama was there, artists. Let's watch the clip first. We see the artist Robert Rauschenberg, the Dalai Lama, as I mentioned, scientist David Bohm, and the Russian economist Stanislav Menshkov talking about competition and compassion. Thank you, Fritjof Capra.
Yes.
You were one of the 2 women that were
There was a nun
at
and
the
me.
conference. Yeah.
But this was organized by a woman, Lauren Byers, and she was quite wonderful, art historian, but also she made incredible connections with the people who normally would never connect. She connected Joseph Beuys with His Holiness Dalai Lama. She connected Joseph Beuys and Andy Warhol together. They never met before.
Joseph Beuys is it's a performance artist.
German artist and performance here, but also and Andy Warhol, and she also organized 3 of these meetings, who were actually revolutionary, because later on there was many meetings, in Japan and different places organized by different people, but she was the original one. She really understood that art means science, and in spirituality, in changing economy, could really bring some, great ideas for the new, way of looking the world.
Yeah.
And this panels was in Stedelijk Museum, and it was actually sponsored by Prince Klaus at that time. And it was incredibly important and very, very stimulative for every of us participate in thinking it.
But did any great ideas come from it?
Yes.
What was your experience?
Yeah, but I mean, just what we just saw now, that's a great idea already. Talking about compassion, talking about, the future of our country, of our civilization. And,
but what was your take from it? Is maybe I should rephrase my question. What did you take from it?
What I took from it is that I'm not alone. That's very important, that actually that the way I'm thinking about spirituality, about the compassion, the way I'm thinking about responsibility as an artist to society, that, I'm not just there to kind of fool around and make artwork in studio, that I have to really have a duty, responsibility, and, to society, and art have to serve something.
But to me, scientists and artists represent a different state of mind. Science is rational, art is inspirational. How do you achieve a profound conversation between those?
I will make it's a very important question. I would think about science, spirituality, and art. What's happening there? Spiritual leaders have intuition, and artists have intuition. But spiritual leaders not just have intuition; they have some kind of, I would say, I don't know, the planetary knowledge. They can actually, by being a long time in meditation, by really working with the body and changing the consciousness and the way how mind functions, they actually can get certain informations that the scientists only can have also, but they need proofs.
Yeah.
And if they don't have proofs, don't they exist. But now, scientists are much more interested to listen to this and find really that actually doesn't mean if they don't have proof, things don't exist. So all of us are connected in so many ways.
Yeah. I watched a really old video with an interview of you from the 70s, and you told the interviewer that Amsterdam back then was the only place where your work was understood right from the beginning. What was the general misconception about your work back then?
Oh, it's very simple. When I started performance in ex-Yugoslavia, I was like the first woman walking on the moon. My parents was criticizing party meetings that they should put me in mental hospital, that this kind of art is not art. My professors was thinking that I completely lost my mind, burning the 5-point star in the square and doing things with naked body and cutting, communist star on my stomach and stuff like that. It was like a scandalous thing. If I read criticism of that time, I will never leave home. But I didn't care. I really understood that I was something that is revolutionary, important, and new. And all these early pieces now, they're in history of performances, books. But that time, it was not possible. And I came to Amsterdam, and really something was changed. But in the same time, yes and not, because in the beginning, when I came to Amsterdam, I came because I was invited to the VPRO with the Franz Varches, the director who was making the program on performance art for the first time. Okay. Actually, it was called body art.
Okay, you have a long history with the VPRO then.
And then I was invited to do performance there.
That's the reason why you came to Amsterdam in the first place.
Yes, in the first place, and came invitation on my birthday. And my grandmother said, everything that you have to be somewhere on your birthday is important, will change your life. And then I discovered that day when I arrived, was my birthday, was also Ulai's birthday. And I met Ulai for first time there, and that also changed my life.
That's your first big love.
And then, yeah, exactly. But then the performance was forbidden. And the whole program was forbidden because of my performance, because I cut 5-point star, misunderstood to be the Jewish star. So I was in every newspaper, in every cover of every magazine, and I come to the country where everything was free.
Oh, so we were not as free thinking as you were hoping.
No, it was just misunderstood at that time. But at the same time, I got the grant because the work was accepted in cultural circles. But not publicly. And there was so many confusions. But in the same time, I really was very happy to be in Amsterdam because I could continue working.
Yeah, but you came there thinking this is more open, tolerant.
I create scandal. My arrival creates scandal. But this was very temporary.
Yeah.
And then later on, it was clear.
It took off. Yeah. Do you still go back to Amsterdam ever? I wondered, or is that chapter closed?
No,
because you lived there for over 30 years. No, 25 years, approximately.
Almost 25 years. Yeah. I live in Amsterdam, and I sold the house, and I moved to New York. But I have to say that I will have in 2023 very big show in Stedelijk Museum.
Yeah, we heard that. I think it's maybe 2024.
Sorry, 2024.
Yeah, you're going to have an exhibition again in Stedelijk Museum.
Yes, but this will be my own show.
Yeah, what can we expect? What can the audience expect from that?
This is going to be actually taken from Royal Academy. The show is in Royal Academy in London. And in 250 years, there have never been women showing there. I will be the first one in the big space. And that show will be taken, it's a very big show, to Amsterdam.
And what type of show is it?
It's called Afterlife. So it's everything, basically, really everything. Lots of early work, my work with Ulai, but at the same time, lots of new work that nobody saw it yet. And also my new work, which is the opera, is going to be shown in Carré, probably next year already. 7 Deaths of Maria Callas.
Yeah, the 7 Deaths of Maria Callas.
So I will have to do a lot to Amsterdam.
And we'll get to talk a bit more about the opera later, because we're going to show a clip of Maria Callas. But how about we first move on to The Color of Pomegranates?
Yes.
A 1969 Soviet-Armenian art film written and directed by Sergei Parajanov. What type of film is it? Because there's no dialogue. It's like... very intense.
If I will think about my DNA grandfather, about aesthetic, content, beauty, and it will be Sergei Parajanov. When I discovered Sergei Parajanov, I went crazy. I think he talked my language. The visuals, the way how the story goes, everything about him it's something that really is kind of give my soul food. Wow. And if you think Tchaikovsky, you could never think about Tchaikovsky without knowing where the source of some inspiration comes from, Parajanov. And also Parajanov is some kind of, source of inspiration for so many East European filmmakers. So we are to look into something like roots of inspiration for many artists. And I remember that when Lady Gaga gave a workshop, I give workshop Lady Gaga here in my house.
Yeah.
And she came and I showed her Parajanov. And now she has the entire, the record actually dedicated to Parajanov work. So she got
So
also...
Lady Gaga dedicated her last album to Parajanov.
Yes, yeah.
As a
I mean, she didn't dedicate. She was inspired by
Inspired by him,
and she
yeah.
also admitted, which was she saw it here right away in my place.
Yeah, so because we're here in your storage room and your house is next to it, but then there's also a studio here, the barn.
The barn.
And you do the workshops there.
Yes, the
And
workshop.
Lady Gaga was one of the artists who did a workshop
Yes,
here.
yeah.
I read in your biography that she ran naked through the woods here behind the house.
And I was so really worried about the ticks and Lyme disease and
It's a very practical way
the
of
poison
looking at it.
ivy and everything else, but she was okay.
She was okay at the end.
So let's
yeah.
see Parajanov.
Okay, yeah, you don't want to talk more about Lady Gaga, I get it. No, but let me give some bit more context because it's an homage to the 18th century poet and martyr Hsieh, the poet. It has also appeared in many polls as one of the greatest films ever made. Let's have a look. The Color of Pomegranates.
It's like tableau vivant. It's like performances that everything single could be taken as a performance kind of scene, and he actually most of the material, the props come from his own house, and the people are from their own village, and everything was kind of handmade, homemade. And I think this movie is so incredible. And then also, it's just the first scene that you see the monks with the naked feet, the smashing the grapes to make a wine. Because of that scene, he was put in Siberia for homosexuality for 4 years.
He was arrested?
In prison.
Because they thought it was a reference to homosexuality?
Yes, just that scene. And then after that, he came out of prison in Siberia, which you can imagine how it could be. And he made another beautiful movies, never refer absolutely to anything political, nothing without criticism, with the same love and beauty, he was not touched by the experience in prison at all.
So there is an importance in taking risks in art, in his case.
Yeah, the thing that art survive everything against the ugliness and the things he went through the Soviet Union,
Earlier in this interview, you told me that about your mother's family, the patriarch in the Orthodox Church.
Yeah.
This movie also made me a bit think of that imagery. Is that something that's...
Of course, because it's all Orthodox, and Serbian Orthodox and Russian Orthodox is the same Orthodox, and is living with my grandmother. I spent most of the time in the church with her. She was very deeply religious, and she wake up in the morning, she do all the rituals with candles and praying, and then we will go to church, and we basically be most of the day in the church. She would pray, and I would kind of sit in the back and play. And I remember a very funny story that when you go to the church, there is a big marble kind of vase with the water, and you put the hand in it, and then you cross yourself. And I saw many people coming to church doing it. And I was like, I don't know, 5 years old. And I thinking, oh my God, must be very holy. So I put a little chair there, stand up, and try to drink all this water. And I just got very sick.
That sounds like a great performance.
But this was I was immediately interested to be holy already, age 4, I remember. But the grandmother was very much into rituals, and the kitchen of my grandmother was center of my world. This was the dreams would be told and explained what it means. And, there was, if you dream the dirty water, you get sick. If you dream, blood means news very fast. If you dream the you too is getting out with the pain, means somebody would die in the family. Without pain, you heard about dying.
That's a very common dream, losing your teeth.
Yeah.
So what was the meaning if it falls out?
With the pain means somebody that from your family die. Without pain, you just heard about somebody dying. I mean, everything was, it was so much symbols and ritualism and cooking and talking about, life and the early understanding what life came from the kitchen of my grandmother.
What was her favorite dish to cook?
Her favorite dish was žito, which is a very religious thing. It's a kind of wheat that you cook for a long time, and then you throw water away, and then you mix with the nuts and honey, and you eat one spoon of this, like for the rituals, as a ritual. That's one of the beautiful things.
It's weird, right? Because to me, communism and religion are so different. Opium from the people, and still, it played a very big role in your life back then.
Yeah, and then it's so interesting that later on I got so huge interest in Buddhism and Tibetan Buddhism, and I went into this all retreats and mantra reciting and being in isolation for a long period of time and going to deserts and stuff like that. It's always there.
It's always there.
It's so important because to me this is, I call it like a research. It's really research how to understand my body and my spirit and my soul. And the more you actually try to understand, the less you know. It's endless. This is why my body is the center of my work.
Maybe it started with drinking the holy water in church when you were 5.
Yeah, probably start with this and then continue forever. Yeah,
took it
really.
from there. You already mentioned the opera that you've made. So let's move on to Maria Callas, the famous opera singer.
Yeah, but then we have to go back to my kitchen, my grandmother.
I know, because I wanted to ask you, when did you hear her voice for the first time? And I know it was in that kitchen.
It was in the same kitchen, and we have old bakelit radio, and my grandmother always would listen music or news. Radio was always on when she was cooking. And then I was having a little breakfast, and there came Callas' voice, but it was just the voice of the no idea who she was. I remember standing up and literally standing in the middle of the kitchen, start crying and listening to the voice. It was such emotional, and then I want to know who she was, who he was. And it's the first time I heard Callas. And then, that's how everything starts. I was 14.
14 when you first heard her voice. And you directed an opera called 7 Deaths of Maria Callas. It finally premiered this summer after you had to postpone it due to COVID. But I read it, it's a piece that's been on your mind for a long time. And to me, an opera, obviously about Maria Callas, makes sense. But why the 7 deaths?
I just took 7 ways of dying, because in every opera, women die for the end, So I took the most interesting dying, and the 7 was a good number always, because I love 7. So, suffocation, heart attack, madness, burning in fire, jump, knifing, tuberculosis, just all major operas, all of them. And then actually it's not 7, it's 8 dead, because it's also 8 dead of Callas herself, which I'm playing, but we are not showing, we're not putting the title. So when you see the first 7, you think the piece is finished. And then, oops, the curtain open again, and there is a room of the Callas totally reconstructed as she was in the time she died in Paris. And that's the 8 dead that we experience. And then you can go home.
We see a clip from a recent documentary about Maria Callas, in which the filmmaker uses her own words, Callas' own words. For our audience, it's good to know that this film is available to watch online in its entirety on NPO+. Let's have a look at the trials and tribulations of Maria Callas in Maria by Callas.
Do you see any similarity?
I wrote down temperament of her mother. That's the
But it's interesting also that she talked about 2 Maria and Callas. I recognize in myself 3 Marina. There is a Marina who is a warrior, there's a very spiritual Marina, and there is a big bullshit Marina. And they all 3 live very harmonious life with me.
Okay, so the warrior and the spiritual one, I think we discussed.
We don't discuss the bullshit. The one who love fashion and love eating chocolates and love, looking bad movies and not working, not doing anything,
The normal Marina, the human Marina.
Yeah,
it's not a bullshitter.
And then I was always, okay, but there was always shame of that one till I got older. And now I'm really accepting all 3 of them living very harmonious life,
Yeah. And obviously, yes, the similarities are there. What other similarities do you see with Maria Callas?
That all this thing with discipline and childhood with the mother and work, and not really having childhood. It's the same with me. I had to, my mother wanted me to study all the time. Every morning that will be at least the instructions of 5-6 things they have to do, how many French, the new words have to learn. Well, you know, she put me in the French, the kindergarten when I was just 3 years old, because to learn French. Then she had an English teacher for me, then she had a piano teacher. And I have to study all the time. And piano teacher, after 1 year, said to my mother, Comrade Abramović, I'm taking money for nothing. She doesn't have, and she will never have talent for music. And I wanted to kiss him. I was so happy, liberated from one less thing to do. You know, and then for my mother, I was never good enough. Whatever I was doing, there was always somebody better. So I could never prove anything. I mean, but, you know, she was
How
very,
long did
very
you
tough
keep reaching for her approval?
Till she died.
Really?
Yeah, till she died. I never could do anything good. And, you know...
She never said that she was proud of you?
No. She never said I was proud of me, but one thing that I, you know, when she died, I find her diaries, and if I read these diaries, I will be completely, my relation different to my mother. And these diaries really broke my heart, because she was incredibly unhappy, always betrayed by father. Never, she loved him, but then he left her when she was only 43 years old. And that was terrible. You know, she never kissed me in my life. And I was always thinking that she didn't love me, but she didn't want to make me weak. All her idea was to really make me a warrior. She didn't want to make me strong and not emotional in life, because she was incredibly overly emotional. She was writing poetry that she hid from everybody and stuff like that. And I discovered only when she died, not before. Also that she was hero and why, all of this. Yeah. So I didn't know my mother at all.
Another similarity maybe, Maria Callas died from a heart attack, but you could also say that she died from a broken heart.
No, definitely broken heart. This is absolutely true. You know, when when she just heard that he married Jacqueline Kennedy, but he told her he has some business to do.
You're talking about Onassis, he married.
Yeah, the Jacqueline Kennedy, and that she's, you know,
and that was her big love.
Yeah,
she basically left her husband.
She didn't want to live anymore, and she literally died from a broken heart.
Yeah,
and you know, and
but you have your heart broken
also
2 times at least.
No,
but you did not die from it.
I didn't die from it because I always got saved by work. Work saved me, and that was so important to me. That work is a really incredibly saving kind of tool for me. You know, I believe in the work. I believe that I have a mission, and I will never give up that. So this was really something. That's why I wanted to. I got angry on Maria, because in this movie, you know, Maria by Maria, you know, she just wanted to have children, and she didn't give a shit about her incredible voice. But when you have such a talent, you don't have right. It's not yours. It's everybody else. You know, and this is why, you know, you just, I need to make this homage to her, and at the same time say, no, you know, you have to go on.
Yeah. Unfortunately, she died a very, very lonely
53
woman.
years old.
Yeah.
Super young.
Alone in her apartment in Paris.
Yeah.
It's a very
And I wanted
sad.
to play her when I was that age. But, you know, because of very complicated story, the money, the possibilities, and finally I had the chance to, you know, to produce in the biggest theater of the world, which is Munich, the Bayerische Theater, this old piece. You know, I'm playing her age 75, a little later, but still doing it.
Yeah, still doing it. We're discussing death now, and I read also in your biography that you've given your own funeral a lot of thought. And there will be 3 funerals in 3 cities that are important to you. One in Belgrade, when you were born, one in Amsterdam, where your career blossomed, and one in New York, obviously where you're living right now. And no one will know in which coffin you're actually...
It's real Marina.
Where your body is. Yeah. But this obviously also represents the 3 Marinas, right? The warrior, the spiritual one,
and the bullshitter.
Yeah,
the 3 Marinas.
Which one will be buried in Amsterdam?
Are you crazy? I'm not going to tell you. Total secret. We
no,
don't
I know that it's a secret where the body is, but I just wonder which metaphorical Marina is where.
I'm not reviving this because there have to be 3 funerals in the same time, and nobody knows where's the real one. This is all point.
No, I know that it's a secret where the body body is, but I mean, spiritually spoken, is the warrior going to be in Amsterdam, or is it the bullshitter, or is the spiritual
Yeah, but
one
then I'm telling you, but
Really?
I can't tell you. This is going to be secret. So, maybe after 50 years after my dad, we revive the secret. I don't know. But honestly, I think the three, they're great. And the idea, why I got this idea, because I went to the funeral of Susan Sontag in Paris, in Père Lachaise, and the son of Susan Sontag actually decided to bury the mother. And it was so incredibly, I think, selfish, because she was larger than life. She was incredible. I was so lucky to know her for 4 years, her last 4 years before dying. And she was one of the most impressive human beings I saw, an incredible warrior, and have such respect. And I feel there should be celebration of her life.
But why did the funeral not do her justice?
Because it was just 15 people in a rainy, freezing autumn day in Paris. It was so sad. I just was too sad. And all the people who wanted to come and say something didn't even know the funeral was there. And the funeral want to be celebration, because you got done good life, you have to have good death too. And you have to be lots of humor, political jokes, not correct, dirty as possible. And everybody dressed not in black, every color, but not black.
And a lot of crying.
And the cry is always good, but also lots of food and drink. All together, just a really good, happy funeral, because, we all have to die at some point. And I always believe that the dying, we have to I want three things. I want to die without fear, consciously, and not to be angry. Three things. No anger, no fear, and consciously. That's the beautiful death.
But you've always said that fear is a very important driving force in your work, right?
Yeah, but then it's not the driving force. You have to recognize what you're afraid of, and then you have to do everything possible to get rid of that.
Yeah.
Because what we are afraid of something, we don't do it. This is why my biography is called Walking Through the Walls. If I see the wall, I'm not standing in the front, I'm walking through.
Through it.
And then is another wall, and you have to walk through again.
And that's the way of in the end dying without fear.
And it's too easy just to look the wall and then go away. So what you do? Nothing. You don't confront your own fears. And this is why I think it's so important, to kind of be example or to be inspiration. This is why all these archives here and everything stays. If my life was not easy, it was difficult. But if I can do it, anybody else can do it. So I want to be inspiration. Look how everything went for me. Maybe can also do some good, advices for you.
What has been the cost of being Marina Abramović?
Wow, it's difficult. Because I never was happy with something which is 100%. I always want to have 150. That 50 extra make all the difference. When you give entire being to something you want and you love, and then, you give even more extra, and when it's nothing left, there is no one molecule of energy more, then you give everything. And then it's beyond critic. If it's good or not good, I can't do more, because I've done everything, So that's why I never listen to criticism. It's always there, whatever you do, it will be criticism.
But you think if you gave 150%, fuck the critics?
Because exactly, because you know that you do the best. When I know that I didn't give my best, I am the worst critic for myself. Then I get sick and terribly depressed. But if I do my best, that's it. You have to take it or leave it, what I can do.
Let's move on to Insomnia. It's one of your own art pieces, a performance where you dance the tango with your own shadow. Do we need to know anything else before we start watching?
I start celebrating my big birthdays, 40, 50, 60, 70. And now I'm looking for 80. It's not yet. There's going to be some time. But
because you're 75 right now.
75. But then I celebrate 50. And my 50th birthday was a very big thing, and I called the urgent dance, because I think when you're getting old, the best dance to dance is tango, Argentinian tango. But then, at that time, I split from Ulay. I was with nobody to dance for. So I decided it will not stop me, and I danced with my shadow. And this is something that, I didn't want to broken heart to affect my life. And then also is very interesting because I'm dancing to Arabian tango, the Lili Buenosh. Actually, he's from, I think from Tunisia. It's Tunisian tango. And I really like to finish this wonderful talk with you with dancing with my own shadow. So if you don't have anybody, there is always your shadow to dance with. That's 50.
That's 50.
That's 50.
Yeah, what's the saying? It's dance like nobody's watching, love like you've never been hurt, right?
Yeah.
That's the saying.
Yeah.
I just wondered what would have been the best way for me to deeply connect with you, by asking you all these questions, by sitting opposite of you just in stillness, or by dancing the tango together?
I think no one of them. I think eating food. I think cooking together and eating the food we cook together. I think food is so a great connection with everybody. There's something about the food. Dancing, but also everything together, it's not just one thing, maybe walking in a forest. And, talking about the knowledge, the teachers, the spiritual teachers, there are three ways of receiving knowledge. So one knowledge is talking, like we are talking to each other, and we are discussing things. And another one is not talking at all, but having gestures, just with the sign language. And the last one is sitting in the silence, and that's the highest. Actually doing absolutely nothing.
It unfortunately does not work on television.
No, this really sucks.
I was happy to be able to talk to you. It was a great pleasure.
We really made a complete loop from the grandmother kitchen all the way to the dancing tango with the shadow. It's a kind of work. We've done, I think, good job.
Thank you so much.
Thank you so much too. Thank you.